Been a while since I've seen you guys in this format. Uh, but I have to run off to do some manly labor. So I wanted to take a minute to address a couple of things that I've been listening to and hearing this week. One being the arguments that exist between flat earthers and globalists. There's a huge uh, relationship gap, not relationship, language gap. What I mean by that is, sure, we all speak English, of course, most of us, but global earthers speak science, and flat earthers speak kind of like going into a court with just your word versus having a stack of documents to draw your answer from. So when the judge asks you, where were you on September 27th, 1984, you don't have to remember or make anything. You can look at your stack of documents and go, oh, yeah, here's my calendar. It looks like I was on a cruise in the Caribbean with my uh, bitch of an ex wife. There's the documentation. I don't have to guess. I don't have to make up a story. I could, but I don't have to because I have the documentation right there. And interestingly enough, I don't even have to verbally answer that question for you. I could have provided that documentation and you could have found it if you had to ask or if you wanted to know at any time. Where was Shane on that day? Oh, here's the clearly documented he was kind of bringing his business life. Um, the beauty of the evidence like that is that it keeps you free from having to knowledge around all the time. And therefore, you never have to worry about an argument coming up or a question that you can answer because boom, there you go, there it is. So it's documented, it's already proven. It's history, but it's written down. Now, if you walk into a court and the judge asks you, why were you speeding, and all you can do is go, well, because you know there was some people in my way and I needed to get around them, and there's no reason for it. The judge isn't going to give you a pass on that. If you're speeding to get away from like a murderer or something and you verify that, great. But most of the arguments that come out of flat earthers are I said so because I don't like your ideas and I don't. So first of all, we don't need NASA to prove the globe. The globe was thought of centuries before NASA, people that weren't even American. So there was nothing American involved in the original globe Earth proof. Secondly, in order for this argument to ever be worth making, because as I see it, it's just people butting heads, flat earthers are going to have to either learn to debunk the science that they're trying to debunk with by learning the science. You have to learn it. Because I say that because flat earthers are never happy with any of the evidence provided by the globe earthers. Never are. There's picture evidence from NASA. Can't have that because you don't trust NASA. There are experiments like the Cavendish experiment, but you don't like that because of the torsion bar or some sort of torsion applied to it. So, there wasn't any scientific need for that. And if you way, it's like you guys totally just reject certain ideas in science without understanding them. So that kind of leads me down this path where like we're arguing this thing, but why are we talking to each other? Because all the flat earthers are doing is essentially agreeing with each other. And all the globe earthers are doing and trying to show the science as to why the flat earthers are so wrong. It's not because we hate you. It's not because we think you're stupid. It's because we believe you have fallen into a belief based on no evidence and not having any backing for it. The religious believers like to spit out the Bible and the Quran and all this other stuff. The Quran. I don't even know how to say that. The Quran. But it's written by men who are not scientists. They're just making stuff up on the fly. There's more science behind any documentation you can find online versus what's in the Bible or the Quran or the uh, whatever other books are out there. Book of Mormon, any other religious text. There's no scientific backing. Yet all sciences is a bunch of people that have said, looking at something, I want to know how that works. I think this is how it works. And then they go out and prove it, and then they document it, and somebody else comes along and can go, I don't know if they did that right. So then they look through the evidence and they go, oh, well, I think you may have misunderstood this, or maybe this was the best you could do at the time. So now let's use this new tool that came out, and we'll do another measurement. We figured out how far the sun was. Um, Eratosthenes figured it out using shadows and basic trigonometry. But then as time grew and we got more technology, we were able to get closer and closer. The measurements that we found were not very far off. So, it tells us that math is certainly a great tool to use if we can figure out an equation to predict something. And we do use the equation called the Pythagorean theorem, which allows us a specific formula which figure out one length of a three-dimensional or three-legged object of a triangle, let's say. So as long as we know two of the lengths, we can figure out the third length using the Pythagorean theorem, and it's been proven again. And then your flat earthers would say, but blah blah blah, the curve. When science is applying the Pythagorean theorem, we take away the curved portion of it by using the radius of the Earth as the center point, so that we don't have to we don't have to factor in the curve when we're doing the Pythagorean theorem between Venus and Sun and center Earth. So, of course, scientists take into the account all the curvature math when it comes to doing these things. Now, those things are beyond me as far as how they arrive at those particular calculations. But if they come up with an equation, we can do the math together to figure it out. So what I'm doing is I'm making a plea to flat earthers to stop what you're doing, stop and think for a second and ask yourselves the why. Why do globe earthers believe it so much? And then we can arrive at sort of like maybe a language where we can speak to each other. Because otherwise, all we're doing is we are making videos and pander to our audience, which for the flat earthers is obviously other flat earthers. Like this challenge that's been issued, this $10,000 challenge. And I'm noticing a couple of people, Simon Dan, I believe, brought it up, as did uh, Greater Sapien. They bring up this challenge from a flat earther that are saying $10,000 to prove the spin of the Earth, or basically the globe, the spin. They have specific parameters. And when I heard that, my thought was pretty much what they're conveying as well: is that it doesn't matter what we do as a globe earther. You're not going to believe anything. The evidence is just going to bounce off your head. Not because you're stupid, not it. It's because you refuse to accept any new evidence that would make you wrong. And I get it. Nobody likes to be wrong. I wouldn't want to necessarily be wrong about the Earth being a globe. But when the math shows that it's flat, I'll believe it. When you can scientifically debunk the globe Earth and scientifically prove the flat Earth, then I'll believe it, because I cannot argue when the science works. You can't. I can't. You can't. You do, but you can't. You're not really able to overcome it. One of the biggest arguments that we talk about when it comes to bumping heads is gravity. One of the really big issues that flat earthers dig into their claws in, because the globe community believes, we know, we've said it, we'll state it over and over. I say that like I'm part of the scientific globe community, but I guess in a way I am. We stated over and over that we don't understand the mechanism behind gravity. We don't understand what makes it work. Does that mean it's not proven? No, that just means that we don't understand why this particular force exists, what's causing it. But we do know how to calculate it. And having that calculation means that we know that it's there, we understand it. There's a couple of things that I wanted to speak to and then share a screen on some math that I did this morning. Completely arbitrary math, just for the fuck of it, really. But we're talking about density and weight as just a factor that happens, that exists. Fuck it word, PHUKET word. he has a video where he's explaining how density and weight are not gravity. And he's using some little diver thing that if you squeeze the bottle, it sinks, blah, blah, blah. And if you watch Conspiracy Cats, he'll kind of discuss it with you over as to why that thing works. And it's an interesting experiment, but it has to do with density and buoyancy. And it's an argument that flat earthers love to throw out there that, it's just density that causes weight. But the problem that you have with that is there is only one direction for which weight matters. It doesn't matter in the up direction. It doesn't matter horizontally. It doesn't matter if you pick something up like this coffee cup. It weighs a certain amount, but it doesn't. To move this coffee cup from here to here, I don't need nearly as much force as I do to pick up off of here, because the force in the downward direction is greater in all the other directions. While everything has a gravity, the Earth's gravity is such the mass of the Earth that it pulls everything toward it. So every flat Earth experiment that tries to disprove gravity by, say, pouring water on a ball that will fall off, or any of those things, it fails because there's always a greater force acting on those experiments, and it's called gravity. Even if you're able to make a vacuum chamber, which has been done, we can see that objects fall at the same speed regardless of density and mass. So why? Because there's a force pulling everything towards the center of mass, which means that you can have a ball in which somebody can stand what seems to be upside down to you because center of Earth is pulling them in. So we can't think of Earth as like a directional component when you're standing on top of it, because it doesn't exist that way. Down for us is literally towards center of mass wherever we are. So that can happen, yeah, which is on the southern hemisphere or on the North Pole. It doesn't matter. Everything's pulled toward the center. So that's what gravity is. It's a force that pulls down. It has a specific mathematical equation that can be factored. And so that's how you answer questions like, why does water adhere to this ball when a butterfly can fight it? Well, it has to do with math. Which brings me to my first screen share of the day. This is the math that I've been up to today. It's kind of fun. I could have just looked all this stuff up, but I kind of wanted to keep my brain sharp. Here's my sketch pad. On the right, you'll see that I don't know how to spell gravitational. Well, gravitational constant is 6.674 times 10 to the negative 11th power. When I broke that out, it looks like this. If you don't know what this negative 11th power means, it means it's kind of like scientific notation. So instead of moving the decimal to the right, you would move that to the left, and therefore we get this huge irrational number. Or is it a rational number? 000, blah, blah, blah. So you would use that in your calculation. You can enter this over here in your calculator, but at least you're maybe to work with this, and that is 10 zeros. I think, and then we look at the radius of the Earth. Now, I did all my factoring in kilograms, even though I used the imperial system, pounds and miles and stuff. But I wanted to make it simple and keep it simple, so I just used kilograms. Even though I wrote the radius of the Earth is that many miles, I figured out that it was this. When I square it, I get this, but I actually came around to the fact that I need meters to do this. So I took 66,710 kilometers squared, which ends up being the same thing, 44,502,241, and it's millions. So it's that many meters, right? So all of my math is based on that when it comes to this equation here. But these are essentially all the constants that we have. We have a butterfly, and I took the largest butterfly average that I can find on the web. I mean, they had some bigger ones, but I started off with this, like a bigger of small butterflies at 0.3 grams or 0.003 kilograms. I looked up a falcon, somewhat of a bigger bird, at 3 pounds. I got 1.36 kilograms. Then I looked up the salt water, how many grams it was per liter. It's 1.03 kilograms per liter, so 1,030 grams. And how many approximate liters were on the ocean, which came out to this huge ass number. What was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, thousand, billion, trillion, billion, trillion, quadrillion, quintillion. Was that sextillion, quint? I don't know how that works. 7th, huge. Then I multiply that by the amount of kilograms, and I got this bigger number down here, which is essentially the same number, which I think, but with one more of these. So what that means is the force applied to these different objects that I calculated are in newtons, meters per kilogram squared. That's, I guess, what a newton means. So Newton on a butterfly is 0.00269. And what a Newton is, it's a force applied to an object based on the size of that object and the distance from the center of that object to the center of the second object. Now, for a gravitational equation, we're using Earth as the second object because if you and I were way out in far reaches of space and we got a certain distance from each other, then we would gravitate toward each other. But in this case, Earth's gravity, because it's so large, it's the only one that matters. It's the only one that really it overrides all of the other gravity. So we're using Earth. So to the Earth, a butterfly is 0.00269 newtons, which means I think it's something like a newton is like 2 pounds of force or something like that. So it's not all that much for a butterfly to overcome that. A falcon is a bit more, which I did a little bit of math and I verified this with the calculator online. It's right around 12 newtons for a falcon. And then for the ocean, my calculator got errored out, but it amounted to a fucking huge amount of newtons. So essentially, what that means is a butterfly doesn't have to have that much force to break away from gravity. It's only sucking down to the earth at 2.00 thousandths of a newton is all the force that's being applied on a tiny butterfly. And their wings are enough that they can create enough lift to overcome that force. And that is essentially why, same with the falcon and any other bird, they can create enough force with the lift of their wings to overcome that Newton mass or that Newton. But if you look at the ocean, as it doesn't really create lift, think about water. It all combines to make one. You have a glass of water that's a body of water. Sure, it can separate, but when you pour it out or when you move it around, it all moves as one, right? So water is essentially one mass. Liquid is one mass on the earth. So that means that not only is the earth pulling toward the water, but the water is pulling toward the earth. And that fucking huge amount of newtons that is applied to it means that it can't go anywhere. So that's the math on it. My writing sucks. I apologize for that. But yeah, so I guess when you're talking about math and you're talking about how gravity is doesn't make sense because certain things shouldn't be able to break the force of it. The problem with that is you don't speak the same language as somebody from the globe. It means that you don't understand that gravity is not an equal force applied to everything equally. It means that gravity has its own. It's kind of like your relationship with your mother versus your brother, and your brother with your mother versus so on. Like, yeah, you all love your mother and you all know your mother, but you know her in different ways. You know different things, and you love her differently. And that's exactly how gravity treats us on Earth. Is your mass will determine how much force is applied to you, which is why, since I'm more massive than most of you, I have more gravity than you do. And it's not a mystery to me. I don't understand why it's a mystery to you guys. I think it's because I think what it is because you don't understand that you don't know, or you choose to ignore that gravity is a what we would call a variable rather than a constant. There's a gravitational constant, but the force of gravity is a variable, which requires various other numbers to be plugged in, include the mass of the objects in question and the distance from the center to center. So I'm using the distance of center of Earth. Basically, I'm using the Earth's radius because the Earth's radius to my radius is only a difference of about 3 feet from the Earth's radius. So I mean, it's negligible. 3 feet isn't going to create more newtons. But that also means that as you go higher, it's going to have more force applied to it, and therefore butterflies, see how high they fly. I don't think they fly that high. I think they reach a point where they can't really go above that anymore because they reach a certain Newton level where the force that they can lift their wings doesn't equal the gravity. So anyway, that is a little excerpt of how gravity works. Now, as you sit there and deny it, the problem with that denial isn't that it isn't your right to deny it. It's that I already know. I can confidently say that you've never tested. And that's the problem. These fundamental scientific principles are tested. They're also questioned by the scientific community, and they're tested and they're kept in recheck to the point where once it becomes a law you can't change, there's no more need to test it. There's plenty of documentation and tests, but it's all out there for you to show yourself. What you have to do is apply some math. You can look it up on Google and test it. So what I'm saying is I'm making an appeal to a flat earther to stop holding on to your beliefs because you think NASA's a liar. Because remember, I don't need NASA at all in my argument about the globe Earth, not a single bit. NASA is just a tool, an implementation that has existed because of technology advancement. That's all it is. Prior to NASA, we believed the Earth was a globe, even before electricity. So remember that when you're debunking NASA. We don't care. We like having the pictures. It's cool to see, but we don't care. We don't need it. Do some math. Learn it. Go online. There's so many tutorials online that will show you how to do math. Go out there and do these experiments. When you go do a laser experiment, what you can do is learn about lasers, what to expect. If you're trying to do a line of sight with a laser, you'll need to know what affects a laser and what's its properties, what does it do, how does it react. You also have to be prepared to do the test several times over several distances, several different areas with several different atmospheric conditions. You have to account for everything. You have to do all of that because if you don't do all of that, for one thing, you're not going to give a globe earther anything they can put their teeth into. It's just going to be as simple as D Marble does a laser experiment. You get excited. Somebody else comes along and goes, but you don't understand lasers, and here's something about lasers. Next thing you know, you're wrong again. So you just set about debunking the globe Earth. You've got to do better. You just have to. Telling me that it's in the Quran or in the Bible, that's not good enough. Those are scientists. Scientists have proven that the Bible is false. The only thing the Bible serves as, in terms of fact, is that there's a couple of geographical things in there and historical things that were accurate. But as far as the whole spiritual theme of these things, whether those are true or not, that's all faith-based, which means there's no documentation or experimentation that will get you to that point. You have to simply believe it. Prove it. You simply have to believe it and hope that it's right. That isn't proof. That is a belief. That is a religion. Proof is this is what I think happens. Here is the experimentation to back that up. My conclusion was slightly off. Here's what I came up with. It was slightly different than my hypothesis, but now that I've tested it and I've narrowed it down, not only have I proven this exists, but here's an equation for which you can also prove it. The problem is, flat earthers, you don't do that. Oh no. That's not a good enough argument. Everything that you say is literally amounts to nuh-uh. It doesn't amount to anything else to a globe earther. I understand that it means everything to you guys because it's easy to get your fan base to agree with you. They already do. And especially if you continue to say things that agree with what you all agree with already. You know, Trump supporters are going to believe that Trump is a great guy no matter what he says or does. While other people can look at his lies and his actions and think, what a douchebag. The majority of Trump supporters are never going to see that because they love him. So he can do no wrong. And that's the flat earth thing right now. There's so many flat earthers out there, just they can't do any wrong because you believe in the flat earth. And that's a little bit fundamentally different than disproving the globe. You know what I mean? Like, I believe in God, but I can't prove it. Whereas I believe there is gravity and I can prove it. So if you're a flat earther and you're out there and you're just mad about the fact that people believe the earth is a globe, or can't believe that we just don't understand why we can't latch onto your beliefs, it's because they don't make any sense and you haven't talked the language that you need to talk. Now, admittedly, I've tried. Jokingly, I've gone to flat earth videos and I've made flat earth style arguments for the globe, like, oh look, I can see a curve in the water, so therefore the earth is curved. And I know that I'm being an asshole, that I'm not showing any proof. I don't know how you guys do that. You just go no, and then you make up some sort of weird. Well, there's always the insults that happens, and then you make up some weird counter theory without any proof. Now, great, do that, but back it up. Do a globe earther and say, here's some science behind it. Show an experiment, show some science. And until you do that, all you're doing is your equivalent is nuh-uh. And the globe earthers can back everything up with scientific evidence and experimentation. And that's just that. It's simple as that. We're not talking the same language. We're talking spiritual, religion, stuff, and you're trying to fit reality to match that. But whereas it doesn't take but a minute to go through all the things that make me believe the earth is a globe. It has nothing to do with what people have told me. It has nothing to do with indoctrination. It's a matter of observing things and going, okay, that makes sense. And then stacking it on top of more things that you observe that makes sense. And trying to figure out like gravity. Why do things go in the same direction and they require less pressure or force in different directions? It's you start adding it all up, and there's only one conclusion you can come to based on actual evidence. Now, here's where the rubber meets the road. And a challenge I have to Flat Earth. It's not a $1 million challenge. I'm not offering money, but I am offering you a chance to. I'm offering you some advice on how to get over Earthers to take you seriously, and that is come up with an actual scientific experiment of some kind. Say water finds its level. Um, that's a great experiment to try to come up with, but you don't ask why. So ask yourself why, and then try to come up with an explanation as to why water always finds its level, and then try to make water not find its level. See if you can accomplish that. If you can accomplish that in every conceivable scenario, then you have an experiment. It's just an idea. I'm not saying you can, but if you can actually show that there's scientific evidence to prove, um, then we might believe you. And the problem that you have with most of those things is that when you do these experiments, you're often proving nothing. You're only showing that it's possible on a flat earth or a globe. Anyway, you have to do better for a flat earther in order to make a globe earth believe you, a globe earther believe you. Because the reality of it is you don't speak the same language we do. And therefore, you will probably never, ever get anybody to believe the earth is, in fact, not when it is, in fact, the globe. You need experimentation. Anyway, if you don't understand the math that I showed you today, or if you have another version of the math, you would like, leave it in the comments and we can discuss it. If you have some alternative to globe Earth with experimentation and scientific backing, encourage you to leave it here. I can share it myself. But the point being, you need scientific evidence. And I know you don't believe that, but if you go to Iraq and you try to talk to some people there and you don't know the language, Farsi, I believe, what are the odds that you're going to get anywhere? You know what I'm saying? Speak the language. Anyway, I got to go do some like actual work. Thank God I don't need to shower. Look at me. Have a good day.